Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Life. Rex Townsend stood in his corner office, watching Seattle's skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. At 35, he'd built Townsend Security, consulting from nothing into a multi-million-dollar empire. His clients ranged from tech billionaires to government agencies, all seeking his expertise in personal protection and risk assessment. Rex possessed an analytical mind that could spot danger patterns others missed, combined with the physical capabilities of his former Navy SEAL training. But none of that mattered compared to Paige. His wife of 8 years entered his office carrying 2 cups of coffee, her auburn hair catching the afternoon light. Paige Townsend was everything Rex wasn't. Warm where he was calculating, spontaneous where he was methodical, trusting where he was suspicious. She ran a successful interior design firm and had transformed their queen and home into something from a magazine. Working late again, Paige set his coffee down and perched on his desk edge. You know, normal people leave work at 5. Rex pulled her closer. Normal people don't have Francisco Garcia trying to poach their biggest client. Francisco Garcia. The name always left a bitter taste. Rex's former business partner had split from their company 5 years ago in an ugly dispute over ethics. While Rex maintained strict principles about which clients they'd accept, Francisco had wanted to expand into grayer areas. The split had been acrimonious, made worse by Francisco's attempt to steal half their client base. "Forget about Francisco," Paige said, running her fingers through Rex's dark hair. "I have dinner reservations at Le Bernardin. My treat for landing the Hartfield account." Rex smiled genuinely for the first time all day. Paige's design firm had been competing for the Hartfield hotel chain contract for months. "Congratulations, Mrs. Townsend. You deserve it." As they prepared to leave, Rex noticed Paige seemed distracted, checking her phone repeatedly. When he asked about it, she claimed her assistant Angela Jennings was handling last-minute details for the Hartfield project. "Everything okay with Angela? You seem stressed about work lately." Paige's smile flickered for just a moment. "Just the usual growing pains. You know how it is when business is booming." That evening at dinner, Rex pushed aside his natural suspicious instincts. Paige was radiant, talking animatedly about expansion plans and her vision for the company's future. She'd always been ambitious, but lately her drive seemed almost desperate. Still, watching her excitement, Rex felt grateful for their life together. After dinner, as they walked to their car, Paige suddenly grabbed Rex's arm. "Promise me something. If anything ever happens to me." "Nothing's going to happen to you," Rex cut her off. "That's why I exist. To keep you safe." "I'm serious, Rex. If something happens, don't just accept the obvious explanation. You're too smart for that. Promise me you'll dig deeper." Rex studied her face in the streetlight. Something flickered in her green eyes. Fear? Regret? Before he could analyze it further, she kissed him, erasing his concerns. 3 days later, Detective Douglas Cox stood in Rex's living room, delivering the words that shattered everything. "I'm sorry, Mr. Townsend. Your wife was killed in a single-car accident on Highway 101. Her vehicle left the road at high speed and struck a tree." Chapter 2. Cracks in the Foundation. The funeral was a blur of condolences and business associates offering support. Rex moved through it mechanically, his trained mind already noting inconsistencies in the accident report. Paige was a cautious driver who knew Highway 101 intimately. The weather had been clear, the road conditions perfect. Angela Jennings approached him after the service, her usual polished demeanor cracked with genuine grief. "Rex, I can't believe she's gone." She was special. "Tell me about her last few days. Did she seem upset? Distracted?" Angela hesitated. "She'd been working odd hours. Taking meetings I wasn't scheduling. When I asked about it, she said she was handling some things personally." She paused, then added quietly, "I think she was in some kind of trouble." That evening, Rex sat in his home office, studying the police report for the 100th time. Paige's Mercedes had left the road at exactly 9:47 p.m., traveling at an estimated 85 miles per hour. No skid marks, no evidence of mechanical failure. The investigating officer, a young patrol cop named Eddie Seymour, had classified it as driver error, possibly falling asleep at the wheel. Rex's phone rang. Detective Cox's gruff voice filled the room. "Mr. Townsend, I need you to come to the station. We recovered some additional evidence from a scene." An hour later, Rex sat across from Cox in a sterile interview room. The detective was a 20-year veteran with tired eyes and the bearing of a man who'd seen too much. "Sir, we found the dash cam footage. The camera was damaged in the crash, but our tech guys managed to recover most of the data." Cox's expression was troubled. "The last 10 seconds of audio, you need to hear this." Cox pressed play on a small digital recorder. Rex heard the familiar hum of Paige's Mercedes, classical music playing softly in the background. Then Paige's voice, tense with fear. "Please, you don't have to do this. We can work something out." A male voice responded, cold and calculating. "Too late for that, sweetheart. You should have thought about consequences before you started digging." The sound of a struggle, then Paige screaming, "Rex! Rex!" And then, just before the crash, clear as day, laughter. Cruel, satisfied laughter that Rex recognized instantly. Francisco Garcia. Rex bolted from the chair so violently it crashed against the wall. His vision tunneled, and every instinct screamed for violence. Francisco had been in the car. Francisco had killed Paige. "Mr. Townsend," Cox called after him, but Rex was already gone, pushing through the station doors into the Seattle rain. He sat in his truck for 20 minutes, hands shaking with rage. The pieces fell into place like a tactical puzzle. Paige's strange behavior, the late-night meetings, her cryptic warning about not accepting obvious explanations. She discovered something about Francisco, something worth killing for. Rex pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Gustavo Velasquez." "Gustavo, it's Rex. I need your help." Gustavo Velasquez had been Rex's intelligence officer during his SEAL days, now running a private investigation firm in Portland. If anyone could help Rex uncover the truth about Francisco Garcia, it was Gustavo. "Rex, man, I heard about Paige." "I'm sorry." Gustavo's voice was warm but cautious. "What kind of help are we talking about?" "The kind that might not be strictly legal." A pause. "I'll be in Seattle tomorrow." Chapter 3. Gathering Intelligence. Gustavo arrived at Rex's house the next morning, looking exactly as he had during their military days, compact, alert, with intelligent dark eyes that missed nothing. He'd brought coffee and the kind of tactical equipment that couldn't be purchased legally. "Talk to me," Gustavo said, settling into Rex's living room. Rex played the dash cam audio, watching his old friend's expression harden. "Francisco Garcia, my former business partner. Dirtier than I thought, apparently." Rex spread out files across his coffee table. "I spent all night going through Paige's papers. Look at this." He handed Gustavo a bank statement from Paige's business account. Large deposits and withdrawals, all in the past 3 months, all tied to shell companies. "Money laundering?" Gustavo asked. "That's what I thought initially. But look at the timing." Rex pulled out another document. These deposits correspond exactly with Francisco's new client acquisitions. He's been using Paige's legitimate business to wash money for his shadier clients. Gustavo studied the papers, and she found out. More than that, I think she was gathering evidence. Rex pulled out a hidden folder he'd found in Paige's home office. She documented everything. Bank records, meeting notes, even photos of Francisco with known criminals. The photos showed Francisco at various Seattle locations with men Rex recognized from FBI wanted posters. Drug dealers, arms traffickers, the kind of clients Rex had refused to work with years ago. She was building a case against him, Gustavo observed. "Why didn't she come to you?" Rex's jaw tightened. "Because she knew I'd kill him." They spent the morning analyzing Paige's evidence. The scope of Francisco's operation was staggering. He built a network that used legitimate businesses as fronts for international crime syndicates. Paige's interior design firm was just one piece of a larger puzzle. "There's more," Rex said, producing a final document. "Francisco's been blackmailing his business partners. Insurance fraud, tax evasion, compromising photos. Once you're in his network, you don't get out." At noon, Rex's doorbell rang. Through the security camera, he saw a woman in her 30s with nervous eyes and expensive clothes. "That's Carrie Landry," Rex told Gustavo. "She owns a chain of boutique hotels. One of Francisco's clients." Rex opened the door. Carrie stepped inside quickly, glancing over her shoulder. "Mr. Townsend, I heard about Paige. I'm so sorry." Her voice shook. "But I need to tell you something. About Francisco Garcia." They sat in Rex's living room as Carrie revealed the full extent of Francisco's operation. He controlled dozens of businesses through a combination of legitimate partnerships and criminal coercion. Those who tried to leave were destroyed financially or physically. "Paige tried to help me get out," Carrie said, tears streaming down her face. "She said she had enough evidence to bring Francisco down. That was 2 weeks ago. Then she died, and Francisco called me personally. He said if I ever talked to the police or anyone else, I'd end up like her." Rex exchanged glances with Gustavo. They had confirmation. Francisco had killed Paige to protect his criminal empire. "There's something else," Carrie continued. "Francisco's planning something big. A meeting next week with all his business partners. He calls it insurance, making sure everyone stays loyal." She provided details about the meeting location, an abandoned warehouse Francisco owned in the industrial district. It would be heavily guarded, with representatives from his entire criminal network present. After Carrie left, Rex and Gustavo sat in silence, processing the implications. "You know what you're thinking is suicide," Gustavo finally said. Rex looked at his friend with cold determination. "Francisco killed my wife. He's built an empire on other people's fear and suffering. And he's getting away with it because people like Carrie are too scared to stand up to him. So what's the plan?" Rex smiled for the first time since Paige's death, but it wasn't pleasant. "Francisco thinks he's untouchable because he's surrounded himself with criminals and cowards. But he made one mistake. He killed someone I loved. And I'm not a criminal or a coward." He pulled out a blueprint of the warehouse district. "We're going to turn his own network against him. By the time we're done, Francisco Garcia will lose everything: his business, his freedom, and his life." Gustavo studied the blueprint, then looked at his friend. "You sure about this path, Rex? Once we start, there's no going back." Rex thought of Paige's final scream, of Francisco's laughter. He already made sure there was no going back. Chapter 4. Building the Trap. Rex's plan began with reconnaissance. For 3 days, he and Gustavo surveilled Francisco's operation, mapping his daily routines and identifying weaknesses in his security. Francisco had grown arrogant over the years, believing his criminal network made him invincible. They discovered Francisco's pattern. Every morning at 7 a.m., he visited his legitimate front company, Garcia Security Solutions, in a downtown high-rise. The irony wasn't lost on Rex. Francisco had stolen his company name along with his clients. On Thursday morning, Rex stood in the building's lobby wearing an expensive suit and carrying a briefcase. When Francisco emerged from the elevator, Rex was ready. "Hello, Francisco." Francisco Garcia froze. At 42, he maintained his lean build, but gained the soft edges of a man who relied on others for violence. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his suit custom-tailored. He looked like a successful businessman, not a killer. "Rex." Francisco's voice was carefully neutral. "I heard about Paige. Tragic accident. Was it?" Rex stepped closer, noting how Francisco's bodyguard tensed. "I keep thinking about those dash cam recordings. Amazing what technology can recover these days." For just a moment, Francisco's composure cracked. His eyes darted toward his bodyguard, a thick-necked man named Jesse Rollins. "I don't know what you're implying, but..." "I'm not implying anything," Rex cut him off. "I'm stating facts. You killed my wife, and I'm going to destroy you for it." Francisco recovered his composure, even managing a cold smile. "That sounds like a threat, Rex. Jesse here might interpret that as a danger to my safety." Rex looked at Jesse Rollins, a hired muscle with more bulk than brains. "Jesse, isn't it? Former bouncer at the Red Door? 3 arrests for assault, 1 conviction. Francisco's paying you what, $5,000 a month?" Jesse's confusion was evident. Rex continued. "Did you know your boss is under federal investigation? Tax evasion, money laundering, murder conspiracy. When the FBI raids his office next week, everyone in his organization becomes a co-conspirator. He's lying, Francisco said quickly, but uncertainty flickered in Jesse's eyes. Rex handed Jesse a business card. When you're ready to make a deal, call me. The FBI offers excellent witness protection programs. Without waiting for a response, Rex walked away, leaving Francisco to deal with his suddenly suspicious bodyguard. That afternoon, Rex met with Detective Cox at a coffee shop near the police station. Cox had been investigating Francisco's organization for months, but lacked the evidence for arrests. The dashcam audio isn't enough, Cox explained. Defense attorneys would claim the voice could be anyone. We need physical evidence tying Francisco to the scene. Rex leaned forward. What if I told you Francisco's planning a meeting with his entire criminal network? Every major player in his organization, all in one place. Cox's eyes sharpened. When and where? Saturday night. Warehouse District. But there's a complication. They'll be heavily armed and expecting trouble. Then we go in with SWAT. And watch half of them escape in the confusion. Rex shook his head. I have a better idea. What if they were too busy fighting each other to notice the police arriving? Rex outlined his plan. Cox listened with growing amazement and concern. That's insane, Rex. And probably illegal. Paige is dead because these people think they're above the law. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. Cox was quiet for a long moment. What do you need from me? Meanwhile, Gustavo was implementing phase 2 of their plan. He'd identified 3 key members of Francisco's network who were vulnerable to manipulation. The first was Russell Costa, who ran a construction company Francisco used for money laundering. Russell's weakness was his gambling addiction. He owed significant money to the wrong people. The second was Tyler Lloyd, who managed Francisco's drug distribution network. Tyler's weakness was simpler. He was ambitious and jealous of Francisco's success. The third was Edmund Vasquez, Francisco's accountant. Edmund's weakness was his family. Francisco had been threatening his daughter to ensure loyalty. Gustavo approached each man separately, offering them a way out of Francisco's organization in exchange for cooperation. The key was making them believe betraying Francisco was their only chance for survival. By Friday evening, Rex's trap was set. Francisco's own people would turn on him at the warehouse meeting, creating chaos that would allow the police to arrest everyone involved. But Rex had a separate agenda, ensuring Francisco paid personally for Paige's murder. You sure you want to go through with this? Gustavo asked as they reviewed their equipment. Rex checked his sidearm, a custom .45 that had served him well during his military years. Francisco laughed while my wife died. He's going to learn there are consequences for that kind of cruelty. And if the plan goes wrong, Rex met his friend's eyes. Then at least Paige will know I tried to get justice for her. Chapter 5. Betrayal and Manipulation. Saturday morning brought unexpected complications. Rex received a call from Carrie Landry. Her voice panicked. Rex, Francisco knows about our meeting. He's threatening to kill my daughter if I don't tell him everything we discussed. Rex felt the familiar cold focus of his military training. Where are you now? My hotel, the Grandview. But Francisco's people are watching me. Stay put. I'm coming. Rex arrived at the Grandview Hotel within 20 minutes, using tradecraft from his SEAL days to avoid Francisco's surveillance. He found Carrie in her penthouse suite, trembling with fear. He called an hour ago, she said. He knows you, and Gustavo have been investigating him. He knows about Detective Cox. He says if I don't bring you to the warehouse tonight, he'll hurt my family. Rex studied her face, looking for deception. Carrie Landry was genuinely terrified, but that didn't mean she could be trusted. What exactly did Francisco say? That you've been poisoning his people against him. That some of his men are planning to betray him tonight. Carrie's voice cracked. He wants me to bring you to the warehouse as a peace offering. Rex smiled grimly. His manipulation campaign was working better than expected. Francisco was paranoid, which made him dangerous but also predictable. You're going to do exactly what Francisco asked, Rex told Carrie. What? Her eyes widened. He'll kill you. Let me worry about that. Just make sure your daughter is somewhere safe. That afternoon, Rex met with Gustavo and Detective Cox for final preparations. Cox had assembled an elite tactical team, but they would wait for Rex's signal before moving. Francisco's expecting a trap now, Cox warned. He'll be ready for anything. Good, Rex said. Paranoid people who make mistakes. At 6 p.m., Rex received confirmation that his manipulation campaign had succeeded beyond expectations. Russell Costa called to report that Tyler Lloyd had approached him about eliminating Francisco during the meeting. Tyler says Francisco's planning to kill everyone who knows about his operation, Russell said nervously. He wants to start fresh with new partners. Rex smiled. The lie he'd planted through Gustavo was spreading through Francisco's organization like a virus. By evening, everyone would be suspicious of everyone else. At 7 p.m., Edmund Vasquez contacted Rex with even better news. Francisco's moving the meeting to a different location. He doesn't trust the warehouse anymore. Where? His private compound in Bellevue, the one with the boat dock. He figures if things go bad, he can escape by water. Rex exchanged glances with Gustavo. Francisco's compound was even better for their purposes, more isolated, with limited escape routes they could control. At 8 p.m., Carrie Landry arrived at Rex's house as planned. She was pale but determined. My daughter is safe, she reported. Hidden where Francisco can't find her. Rex handed her a small device. Wear this. It's a wire. Detective Cox will be monitoring everything. Francisco will search me. No, he won't. You're going to tell him you escaped from me, that I forced information from you, but you managed to get away. He'll be so focused on the threat I represent, he won't think to check you for surveillance equipment. Carrie looked terrified but nodded. What about you? How do you get to the compound? Rex showed her a map of the waterfront area. I'll be arriving by a different route. Chapter 6. The Compound. Francisco Garcia's compound occupied 5 acres of prime waterfront property in Bellevue, surrounded by high walls and sophisticated security systems. Rex studied it through night vision binoculars from a speedboat anchored a half-mile offshore. 12 guards that I can see, Gustavo reported through his earpiece. Motion sensors on the perimeter, cameras at every angle. In the dock, 2 speedboats tied up, engines warm. Francisco's definitely planning an escape route. Rex checked his equipment one final time. In addition to his sidearm, he carried flash grenades, zip ties, and a small explosive device Gustavo had acquired through military contacts. Tonight wasn't just about arresting Francisco. It was about ensuring he faced justice for Page's murder. At 9:30 p.m., Carrie Landry's voice crackled through their communication system. She was inside the compound, having convinced Francisco she'd escaped from Rex after being interrogated. He believes me, she whispered. But Rex, there are more people here than we expected. At least 30 men, all armed. Through Carrie's wire, they heard Francisco addressing his gathered associates. His voice carried the paranoid edge of a man who knew his empire was crumbling. Someone has been spreading lies about me, Francisco said, telling you I'm planning to eliminate loyal partners. These are the desperate actions of Rex Townsend, a man who can't accept that his wife died because of her own greed. Rex's jaw tightened. Even now, Francisco was twisting the truth. Page Townsend discovered our operation and tried to blackmail us, Francisco continued. When that failed, she threatened to expose everyone. I had no choice but to protect all of you. Through his binoculars, Rex could see into the compound's main building through large windows. Francisco stood at the center of a group of well-dressed criminals, playing the role of a concerned leader protecting his people. Rex Townsend is outside right now, Francisco announced. He's planning to attack this compound with the help of federal agents. But I have a surprise for him. Francisco gestured to someone off camera. Moments later, guards dragged in Detective Cox, bloodied and barely conscious. Rex's blood ran cold. The detective must have been captured during his own surveillance of the compound. This changed everything. Cox was monitoring our communications, Francisco said, which means the police know about tonight's meeting. We have perhaps an hour before they arrive in force. Francisco pulled out a pistol and pressed it to Cox's head. But first, we're going to send Rex Townsend a message about what happens to people who interfere with our business. Rex was already moving before Francisco finished speaking. He signaled Gustavo to begin their assault on the compound's waterfront while Rex approached from the main gate. The first guard never saw Rex coming. A knife between the ribs dropped him silently to the ground. Rex acquired his assault rifle and moved toward the main building, using shadows and cover like the predator he'd been trained to be. Behind him, explosions echoed from the boat dock as Gustavo destroyed Francisco's escape route. Alarms began blaring throughout the compound. Rex reached the main building just as Francisco's men began organizing their defense. Through the windows, he could see Francisco shouting orders while keeping his gun trained on Detective Cox. Time was running out. Rex activated the small explosive device Gustavo had provided and hurled it through the main window. The flashbang grenade detonated in the center of Francisco's meeting, creating chaos and temporary blindness. Rex followed immediately, crashing through the window in a shower of glass and smoke. Chapter 7. Confrontation. The flashbang had done its work perfectly. Francisco's associates stumbled around the room, temporarily blinded and disoriented. Rex moved through them like a ghost, using their confusion to his advantage. He dropped 2 men with precise strikes to pressure points, acquired another weapon, and moved toward Francisco's last known position. The smoke was beginning to clear, and Francisco's men were regaining their vision. "There!" Tyler Lloyd shouted, pointing at Rex's position. "Kill him." But instead of coordinating their attack, Francisco's paranoid associates turned on each other. Rex's manipulation campaign had succeeded. Each man suspected the others of betrayal. Tyler Lloyd shot Russell Costa in the back, claiming he was reaching for a weapon. Edmund Vasquez tackled Tyler, screaming about his threatened daughter. Other men joined the melee, years of suppressed resentments exploding into violence. Rex used the chaos to reach Detective Cox, who was conscious but barely mobile. "Can you walk?" "Give me a weapon," Cox gasped. "I want Francisco as much as you do." They moved together toward the back of the room, where Francisco was trying to restore order among his disintegrating organization. The man who'd killed Paige looked genuinely shocked at how quickly his empire was collapsing. "Idiots!" Francisco screamed. "Rex Townsend is the enemy, not each other." But it was too late. The room had erupted into a full-scale gunfight, with Francisco's own people hunting each other through the smoke and darkness. Years of criminal partnership dissolved into savage competition for survival. Francisco spotted Rex approaching and raised his weapon. "You destroyed everything I built." "You destroyed it yourself," Rex replied coldly, "when you decided murder was acceptable business practice." Their gunfight was brief and decisive. Francisco had relied on others for violence too long. His reflexes were slow, his shooting stance amateur. Rex's military training gave him every advantage. Francisco's shot went wide, shattering a window. Rex's shot found its target, dropping Francisco to the ground with a wounded leg. Rex approached the fallen man, weapon trained on his chest. Around them, the gunfight was winding down as Francisco's associates either fled or fell. Through his earpiece, Rex could hear police sirens approaching. "You killed my wife," Rex said quietly. Francisco laughed, even through his pain. "Your precious Paige wasn't the innocent victim you think she was. She was stealing from her clients, laundering money through fake renovation contracts. I offered her a partnership. She chose betrayal instead." "You're lying." "Am I?" Francisco pulled out his phone, showing Rex a series of photographs. "These are bank records from Paige's business account. Every renovation she charged was inflated by 30%. She kept the difference." Rex studied the photos, his trained mind analyzing the financial data. The evidence was compelling, but something felt wrong. "Even if that's true," Rex said, "it didn't justify murder. She was going to expose my entire operation to save herself." Francisco's composure finally cracked. "Everything I built destroyed because your wife got cold feet." Rex saw the truth in Francisco's desperate rage. Paige had discovered his criminal network and tried to extract herself by gathering evidence. Francisco had killed her to protect his empire, then fabricated evidence of her guilt to justify his actions. "The bank records are fake," Rex realized. "You created them after she was dead." Francisco's expression confirmed Rex's deduction. The photographs were sophisticated forgeries, probably created by Edmund Vasquez under duress. Sirens grew louder outside the compound. Rex could see police lights through the shattered windows. "The police will be here soon," Rex told Francisco. "You're going to confess to killing Paige. And if I don't," Rex's expression was colder than Francisco had ever seen. "Then I'll make sure you don't live to see a trial." Chapter 8. Justice. The next few minutes passed in controlled chaos as SWAT teams surrounded the compound. Rex made sure Detective Cox was positioned near the evidence they'd gathered, while Francisco lay bleeding from his leg wound. "This is Seattle Police. Everyone drop your weapons and come out with your hands visible." Most of Francisco's surviving associates surrendered immediately, finally understanding that their criminal empire was finished. A few tried to fight, but they were quickly overwhelmed by superior numbers and training. Rex holstered his weapon and helped Detective Cox to his feet. "Can you walk?" "I'll manage." Cox looked around the destroyed room, taking in the bodies and evidence. "Hell of a thing, Rex. Francisco's entire organization destroyed in one night." Through the smoke and debris, Rex could see Francisco trying to crawl toward a dropped weapon. Rex stepped on Francisco's wrist, pinning his hand to the floor. "Going somewhere? You think this ends anything?" Francisco gasped. "I have associates in 3 countries. People who owe me favors. This isn't over." Rex knelt beside Francisco, his voice low enough that approaching police couldn't hear. "You're right. It's not over, because I'm going to make sure everyone knows you murdered an innocent woman to protect your criminal empire. Your associates will abandon you. Your clients will disappear, and you'll spend whatever time you have left looking over your shoulder." Francisco's eyes widened as he realized the implication. Rex wasn't just seeking legal justice. He was promising a different kind of vengeance. "You can't threaten me," Francisco whispered. "There are laws." "Laws?" Rex's smile was terrifying. "You killed my wife and laughed about it. The only law that matters now is the one that says I get to watch you lose everything." SWAT officers reached their position, ordering everyone to the ground. Rex complied, allowing himself to be zip-tied and searched while maintaining eye contact with Francisco. Detective Cox, despite his injuries, took charge of the scene. "This is Detective Cox, badge number 4472. The suspect, Francisco Garcia, is wanted for murder conspiracy in the death of Paige Townsend." As paramedics treated Francisco's leg wound, he tried one last desperate play. "Detective, Rex Townsend attacked us. He's the criminal here." But Cox had Carrie Landry's wire recordings, documenting Francisco's confession to ordering Paige's murder. Combined with the evidence Rex and Gustavo had gathered, Francisco's guilt was undeniable. "Francisco Garcia, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, and racketeering," Cox announced. "You have the right to remain silent." As Francisco was loaded into an ambulance under police guard, Rex caught a glimpse of his expression. The arrogant criminal mastermind was gone, replaced by a broken man who finally understood he'd lost everything. Carrie Landry emerged from her hiding place in the compound's kitchen, where she'd taken shelter during the gunfight. She was shaken but unharmed. "Is it over?" she asked Rex. "The criminal part is over," Rex replied. "Francisco's organization is finished. His associates are either dead, arrested, or running for their lives." Carrie nodded gratefully. "Thank you. For my daughter, for all of us," he threatened. Rex was released after giving his statement to investigators. The evidence against Francisco was overwhelming. The dashcam audio, Carrie's wire recordings, financial documents, and testimony from multiple witnesses. But as Rex drove home through Seattle's early morning streets, he knew his personal war with Francisco was just beginning. Chapter 9. The Last Laugh. 3 months later, Rex Townsend sat in a federal courthouse as Francisco Garcia's trial reached its conclusion. The prosecution had built an overwhelming case, documenting not just Paige's murder, but Francisco's entire criminal enterprise. Francisco looked haggard and defeated, his expensive suits replaced by an orange jumpsuit. His legal team had attempted every possible defense, but the evidence was too comprehensive to dismiss. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Carolina Fisher asked. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, how do you find? Guilty. Francisco showed no emotion as the guilty verdicts continued. Money laundering, racketeering, witness intimidation, guilty on all counts. He was facing life in prison without possibility of parole. Rex felt a measure of satisfaction, but his campaign against Francisco wasn't finished. The legal system had provided justice, but Rex wanted something more personal. After the sentencing, Rex visited Francisco in the federal detention center. The man who'd once commanded a criminal empire now sat in a small concrete cell, awaiting transfer to maximum security prison. Come to gloat, Francisco asked when Rex entered the visiting room. I came to give you an update, Rex said pleasantly. Your associate Tyler Lloyd was found dead in his cell yesterday. Apparently, word got out that he was cooperating with federal investigators. Francisco's face went pale. In prison, being labeled a snitch was a death sentence. That's unfortunate, Francisco managed. Russell Costa is in witness protection, but he's had 3 attempts on his life. Someone leaked his location to your former associates. Rex leaned forward slightly. I wonder who could have done that. Francisco was beginning to understand. Rex hadn't just destroyed his criminal organization. He was systematically eliminating everyone who'd worked with Francisco, using their own paranoia and violence against them. You can't do this, Francisco whispered. Do what? I'm just sharing information. What your former partners do with that information is their choice. Rex's smile was cold. Although I have to admit, it's interesting how quickly criminals turn on each other when they feel threatened. Over the following weeks, Francisco watched his entire world collapse from his prison cell. Edmund Vasquez died in a car accident that looked suspicious to anyone who understood Francisco's history. Jesse Rollins was found beaten to death in an alley, apparently the victim of a robbery gone wrong. Each death was technically unrelated to the others, but Francisco recognized the pattern. Rex was hunting down everyone connected to Page's murder, using their own criminal connections and enemies to eliminate them. The final blow came 6 months into Francisco's sentence. He received a letter with no return address, containing a single photograph. The image showed Page's grave, covered in fresh flowers. Standing beside the headstone was Rex Townsend, no longer the broken widower Francisco remembered. He looked focused, determined, and completely at peace. On the back of the photograph, Rex had written a simple message. She knows justice was served. Sleep well, Francisco. Francisco crumpled the photograph, finally understanding the true scope of his defeat. Rex hadn't just sought legal justice. He dismantled Francisco's entire life, eliminated his associates, and ensured he would spend his remaining years in isolation and fear. The man who'd laughed while Paige Townsend died had learned there were consequences for that kind of cruelty. Rex had promised Francisco would lose everything, and he'd kept that promise with methodical precision. As Francisco lay on his narrow prison bunk that night, listening to the sounds of violence echoing through the cell block, he realized Rex had achieved something worse than revenge. He'd created justice that would last forever. Francisco Garcia had murdered an innocent woman and destroyed countless lives in building his criminal empire. Now he would spend whatever time he had left watching that empire's consequences catch up with him, one death at a time. Rex Townsend had won more than a legal victory. He'd proven that some people, the truly dangerous ones, never forget and never forgive. Francisco had bet his life on intimidation and violence, but he'd underestimated the quiet fury of a man who'd lost everything that mattered to him. In the end, Rex Townsend had the last laugh after all. Epilogue. 5 years later, the morning sun filtered through the windows of Rex Townsend's new office in Portland, Oregon. Gone was the sterile corporate atmosphere of his Seattle headquarters. This space felt warmer, more personal. Photographs of Paige lined one wall, not as shrines to the dead, but as celebrations of a life well lived. Rex had moved to Portland 18 months after Francisco's trial, needing distance from the memories that Seattle carried. Townsend Security Consulting had evolved too, shifting focus from corporate protection to something more meaningful. His client roster now included domestic violence shelters, witness protection programs, and families threatened by organized crime. People like Carrie Landry, who needed protection from predators who believed violence was a business tool. At 41, Rex had found something he'd never expected after Paige's death: purpose beyond revenge. A knock at his door interrupted his morning routine. Gustavo Velasquez entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee and looking remarkably unchanged despite the years. Their partnership had formalized after Francisco's downfall, combining Rex's strategic mind with Gustavo's investigative expertise. Morning briefing, Gustavo announced, settling into the chair across from Rex's desk. Carrie Landry called. She wants to expand the hotel security contract to cover her new properties in Vancouver. Rex smiled. Carrie had rebuilt her business empire on a foundation of legitimate success, no longer vulnerable to the kind of predators Francisco had represented. Her hotels now employed several families who'd escaped from criminal organizations, offering them fresh starts and honest work. Approved. What else? Detective Cox sent an update from Seattle. Francisco's federal appeals were denied again. He's officially serving life without parole at ADX Florence. Rex nodded, but felt no satisfaction at the news. Francisco Garcia had become irrelevant to his life, a problem solved and forgotten. The true victory wasn't Francisco's imprisonment. It was the lives Rex had helped rebuild in the aftermath. There's more, Gustavo continued, his expression growing serious. We received an inquiry from a woman in Miami. Her husband was murdered by his business partner, and she thinks the police aren't taking it seriously enough. Rex studied the file Gustavo handed him. The case details were eerily familiar. A successful businessman killed in what authorities had ruled an accident, a grieving spouse convinced of foul play, and law enforcement focused on easy answers rather than uncomfortable truths. Angela Martinez, Rex read from the file. Her husband ran a construction company. His partner claimed he fell from scaffolding, but she found evidence of financial irregularities. Sound familiar? Rex closed the file, set up a meeting, but make it clear we're investigators, not vigilantes. We find evidence. We turn it over to proper authorities. It was a distinction Rex had learned to maintain carefully. The line between justice and revenge was thinner than most people realized, and crossing it changed you in ways that couldn't be undone. He'd walked that line with Francisco and survived, but he wouldn't recommend the journey to others. Gustavo left to make the arrangements, and Rex returned to his morning routine. At 10 a.m., he had a standing appointment that had nothing to do with business. The Portland Veterans Hospital was a 20-minute drive from his office. Rex had been volunteering there for 3 years, working with combat veterans struggling with PTSD and survivor's guilt. It was therapy for him as much as service to others, talking to men and women who understood the weight of violence and loss. Rex, Dr. Audrey Fisher waved from the hospital entrance. Your group is waiting. Dr. Fisher ran the Veterans Counseling Program, a woman in her 50s who dedicated her career to helping damaged soldiers find peace. She'd been skeptical when Rex first volunteered, questioning whether someone seeking his own healing could help others find theirs. Time had proven her concerns unfounded. Rex's experience with grief and his methodical approach to problem-solving made him uniquely effective with veterans who'd lost faith in traditional therapy. Morning, everyone. Rex addressed the circle of 6 veterans gathered in the hospital's group therapy room. Who wants to start today? For the next 2 hours, Rex listened to stories of loss, guilt, and the struggle to find meaning after trauma. He shared his own experiences selectively, focusing on lessons learned rather than details of revenge achieved. One veteran, a young Marine named Tyler who'd lost his entire squad in Afghanistan, was struggling with survivor's guilt and thoughts of self-harm. I keep thinking I should have died with them, Tyler said quietly. What's the point of being here if they're not? Rex had heard similar words from his own mouth in the months after Paige's death. The point, he said carefully, is that survival gives you the chance to honor their memory through how you choose to live. That sounds like therapist bullshit. Maybe. Or maybe it's the difference between dying with them in spirit and living for them in practice. Rex leaned forward. I lost someone too. For a while, I thought my only choice was between revenge and surrender. But there was a third option I didn't see initially, which was building something better from the ruins they left behind. After the group session, Rex drove to his final appointment of the day, one that had become sacred ritual over the past 5 years. Paige's grave overlooked Elliott Bay from a hilltop cemetery in Seattle. Rex made the drive from Portland every month, not out of morbid obsession, but from a need to report progress. Today, he brought news she would have appreciated. We helped another family this week, he told her headstone, setting fresh flowers beside the granite marker. The Hendersons in Tacoma. Their daughter was being stalked by an ex-boyfriend the police couldn't touch. We convinced him to find a new hobby. Rex had learned to talk to Paige naturally, sharing both victories and struggles as if she were still there to offer advice. The conversations weren't about clinging to the past. They were about carrying the best parts of their relationship forward. Gustavo thinks I should start dating again, he continued. Says you'd be furious if I spent the rest of my life alone. He's probably right, but I'm not ready yet. Maybe someday. The truth was more complicated. Rex had met women over the past 5 years who interested him. Dr. Fisher actually had made her availability subtly clear. But building new relationships required emotional vulnerability that felt dangerous after losing Paige so violently. As the sun set over Puget Sound, Rex shared the day's real news. Francisco's appeals were denied. He'll die in prison, forgotten by everyone except the families he destroyed. I thought you'd want to know it's finally, completely over. A gentle breeze stirred the flowers on Paige's grave, and Rex chose to interpret it as approval. The drive back to Portland gave Rex time to reflect on how dramatically his life had changed. 5 years ago, he'd been consumed by rage and the need for revenge. Today, he ran a successful business that protected innocent people while finding personal healing through service to others. The transformation hadn't been easy or automatic. Rex had spent 2 years in therapy with Dr. Fisher, learning to process grief without destroying himself in the pursuit of justice. He discovered that revenge could be a tool for closure, but only if it led to something constructive rather than simply more destruction. Francisco Garcia's criminal empire was indeed dead, its survivors either imprisoned, dead, or scattered to the winds. But more importantly, the network of businesses and families Francisco had terrorized were thriving under legitimate leadership. Carrie Landry's hotel chain employed over 200 people, many of them refugees from criminal organizations. Edmund Vasquez's daughter had graduated from college and worked as a victims' rights advocate. Even Jesse Rollins' family, the man had left behind a wife and 2 children, received anonymous financial support that would continue until the children reached adulthood. Rex had learned that true victory wasn't just destroying your enemies. It was building something better from what they tried to destroy. His phone rang as he crossed the Oregon border. Detective Cox, calling from Seattle. Rex, got some news you'll want to hear. That Miami case your partner called about? I ran some background checks. The business partner has connections to a trafficking network we've been investigating. Federal involvement? FBI's taking over next week. But they could use someone with your expertise for the family protection angle. Rex smiled. Send me the details. We'll be on a plane tomorrow. As he hung up, Rex realized something that would have surprised his younger self. He was looking forward to the challenge, not for the satisfaction of destroying another criminal, but for the opportunity to help another grieving family find justice and peace. The long road from revenge to redemption had taught Rex Townsend that the best way to honor the dead wasn't through violence, but through ensuring their loss led to something meaningful for the living. Paige would have approved. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.